Why the f do you think we're being deported anyway? Black and brown, if they can get us up out of here. Trying to help y'all. There was too much strength in numbers in this country. Too many laws were being passed. Too much advancement was being made. That's why deportation is a thing amongst the black and the brown that they can give it to. White immigrants ain't being deported because that contributes to their wealth. We didn't contribute to their wealth. We tried to share it with y'all. So when y'all say, oh, we don't owe y'all nothing, we ain't standing with y'all, it's really a slap in our face, both black and brown, because if we had focused on ourselves, we'd be further. We wouldn't even, but we don't operate like that. We see what you go through. They knew once we got off them boats and got off them planes, this country was in trouble. We came from all across the globe seeking a better life to be brothers and sisters with you. You feel me? How many people in the Black Lives Matter movement was Caribbean? Very few were American. They wouldn't show up. They wouldn't leave their house. Some did. Who was on the front line? The Caribbeans, the Latinos, the black Asians, the brown Asians, the ones who were lighter skinned. Either way it goes, other people of color were on the front lines with you. Being thrown to the ground, maced, jailed, and some more shit. Even the indigenous. So for y'all to say, it's like y'all used us. You used us to push your agenda. You used us to protect you because you couldn't protect yourself. Why do you think strange fruit was made? Do you remember what the hell was going on in this country before we got off them damn boats and got off them planes in black and brown? They eased up when they saw that it was strength in numbers. And now that we getting the fuck out of here, they're deporting our aunties and uncles in the older generation. You sit your privileged ass right there and say you don't owe us shit. You owe us everything.
So I just want to respond to that post. And a lot of what she said is absolutely inaccurate. It's very disingenuous. And this is why. So I grew up in New York. I now live in the South. So I've seen both sides of this coin. I grew up around a lot of West Indians. I grew up around a lot of the Latin community. And it's like we're all in this big melting pot in New York. And I'm going to speak in regards to the Caribbean and African community, since she mentioned especially the West Indian community. So if you know anything, growing up in New York, my age range, able to experience a lot of things along with the baby boomers, because that age range, our generation, we were a little bit more prone to listen. With that being said, as I was growing up, my parents, as I was growing up in New York, my parents, we had a lot of West Indian family and we have West Indian friends, okay? And my parents, we went to church in Harlem. And one of the sisters in the church, she's from the West Indies. And her and my mom became really best friends. And so she had just migrated to the country. And to give, to not only as a sisterly in the Lord type of hospitality, but just also too as a person of the diaspora, black sister helping out another black sister get on your feet. She came and stayed with us for quite a while, and I shared a room with her. She's my sister's godmother, and I haven't talked to her in years, and she was so sweet. And on the weekends, I would go with her sometimes to another friend of hers who was also from the West Indies, to Harlem, because they shared an apartment too in Harlem. So because she used to work in the city part on some weekends, and I grew up with eating macaroni cheese and eating roti, so I know a lot about this. But for her, the young lady in the beginning, the post she made, to me, I feel like it was a little bit disingenuous, because for her to say that, to even mention strange fruit, that's very disrespectful, because strange fruit was really something that was very sacred. A song that Billie Holiday made, lynchings. You see what I'm saying? And this thing was widespread. This was like for fun. People were putting this on postcards and sending it to each other like Christmas cards. And for her to mention something like that, I just feel like it shows that there's a lack of education that happened in this express of a lot of West Indians and Africans when they came into this country. They never took the time. They only went off of the words that was spoken to them from people that didn't have an opportunity to come over here. Civil rights was passed, and West Indians and Africans no longer needed sponsorships from white Americans to come and migrate into this country. The ink didn't even dry fast enough. The law wasn't even docked in the book quick enough, and they were already over here in planes and boats. And when they got over here, this was the first time, especially the Caribbean community, this was the first time a lot of them were able to even open up their own businesses. Because let's get this thing straight here. She talking about she came over here to save us? Girl, back. First of all, okay, who else gonna eat your oxtails? I don't see a lot of white people rushing into, even to this day in 2025, the overall majority of people that eat your food is FBA. Hello? The only time white Americans really want to be dealing with West Indian people is either they're over there for vacation, or if they work it out some kind of way through an agency to bring them over here to the States to be nannies and caretakers of their house. Now, if I'm lying, I'm flying. Okay? Because I grew up in New York. I've seen this. And then in regards to even the businesses, it's very expensive in the West Indies for black people to open up businesses over there. And also, it's very racist over there. They would rather give the Chinese man access to businesses over there in the Caribbeans than they were to give their own people a spot in a hut. So for the very first time, this was an open door for them to open up businesses here in the United States. And the first place they opened it was the FBA neighborhoods. And you came to save us? You was here, you was sent from above to help us with the lynchings and the strange fruit. The only strange fruit that was here in America was you. And then for the Africans, like I said before, with the Africans, you know, again, a lot of black men, these passport bros and these black American men that always want to deviate from their black women here in the United States without understanding their history. They always want to use black women as it is very pimpish. It's very pimpish. You know, a lot of young black men that are in that passport bro group, a lot of them grew up with watching Superfly in the house. It was a lot of that black exploitation that they saw on television, or that they were hearing in their homes from a lot of the black men that were now starting to separate themselves from their families. And that was the creation of the single black mothers during around that time. And a lot of these black men during that time, crack dropped. That's when you saw the expansion of black men going into prison. A lot of black men that were separated from their black wives and girlfriends. And when they came back from serving time, the dynamics had changed. Economy had changed. The dynamics had changed, and they were no longer able to come into the households anymore. The last time a lot of black men were in the households with black women, black exploitation was high on the social level. And so all of that, you do what I say when I say, and black women would fall back, whether they were living in poverty or not. That was just the social behavior. They would do it. But see, after crack fell into the neighborhoods and black men came back from these prisons back into their homes, the economy had greatly changed. Social orders had completely changed. And it was something that was unfamiliar with a lot of black men. And they took out what was unfamiliar to them as they saw it as black women was trying to get them out of the home, keep them away from their children, things like that. So a lot of black men that use black women, oh well, they're not submissive and all of this. Black men are always putting down black American women, saying that black women are not submissive, this, that, and the other. And they always want to put the African woman over the foundational black American woman. But see, this is what you don't understand, and they're not going to tell you this, is that a lot of times when the African community comes over here to the United States, it's a lot of pressure on the woman. Okay? It's a lot of pressure on the woman. A lot of times African men can, even if they're educated over there in Africa, a lot of times it's very hard for them to get a job here in the United States. Sometimes it's language barrier, accent barrier, culture, certain cultures, because black men in Africa, they do still have a sense of pride. But see, black men here in America have been socialized to understand their quote unquote place. And so it's sometimes more easier for black American men to get a job over the African men here in the United States. African woman, there's a lot of pressure on her. Okay? A lot of times those hair braiding places are the only income, steady income that's coming into that African household as they're here new in the United States. Now, it wasn't like that over there in the continent. A lot of times it was the black man who was taking care of the family because he can be able to do that. But when you come over here to the United States, it's so much. And the black African woman, she's able to get into nursing. She's able to get into different medical fields. She's able to get into to the cosmetology field. That's been an open door. And let me ask you this question. Who has been sitting in them chairs, getting their hair braided, bringing you hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to those braiding chairs? It's not white women. But you came over here to save us, right? A lot of times, the only jobs that a lot of African men can only get here if they don't have education is a lot of times they work in hotel services. They do a lot of porter services, jobs that a lot of black men used to do during Jim Crow. White America also know how to play the game when it comes to the diaspora in the United States. They study everything we do. Are you kidding me? They know that if I were to give a FBA a bank loan for $1 million, it would turn around and it would probably displace many white Americans in that community, because this happened before. Black Wall Street, Harlem, certain places in North Carolina, Atlanta. There's so many different places. New Orleans. There's so many different places where black FBA, foundational black Americans, have taken something and taken nothing and made it into something, and it basically displaced them. The history books are there, but a lot of times black immigrants that come over here from the West Indies and Africa, they don't want to accept that type of history. And because there's been a breakdown of the black family, that's why you see some of these ghettos in some of these black neighborhoods. But for the most part, FBA, foundational black Americans, we are very successful. Even when we are not outwardly showing the success, we're still successful. We still create the culture. We still are the most replicated around the globe. It just is what it is. And we're still able to read. We are still able to speak different languages. We're able to immerse ourselves into different cultures. We don't feel a threat when other races come into this community, unlike white Americans more oftentimes do. We understand that there is strength in numbers. And that's why we get so offended when other communities in our black diaspora talk down on us or want to disassociate themselves with us Why? Because see, this is when it counts. This is the moment of truth. So all of those years, I can remember growing up, and we was the ones that was going to the reggae parties. We was the ones that was going to the Puerto Rican Day parades. We was the ones that was going to the African shops and making sure that we give our money to the African sisters that are braiding our hair and they're selling shea butter and this, that, and the other. It was us. The solution moving forward is get yourself into the FBA communities. If you see there's an NAACP meeting, you need to be there. If you know that there's a Black American church, whether they're Baptist, whether they're Jehovah, whether they're Apostolic, Pentecostal, Church of God in Christ, whatever, you need to be there. If you know that there's a foundational Black American restaurant that's opening up, you need to be first in the line. You too need to openly show your sense of unity and that you mean it and that you're standing on this. Don't separate. I had a friend who I also used to work for. She was an African woman and I loved her, and I loved her family because she was one of the only first ones that I've ever met here in the United States that opened up her home to me, to my child. And she was from Kenya and she was a very smart businesswoman and I worked under her and I learned a lot. See, that's a smart woman right there. You see what I'm saying? And she used to always tell, she said, you know what? I look at y'all and she said, I always see every one of y'all that working here, y'all got a twin back in Africa. She would always say that. And you know what? That's a smart woman right there. And she meant it truthfully. It wasn't something that she was putting on. This is something she meant from her heart. And I've always respected that. And that's why I know that we can do this thing.